say that this is what you want to do. You have no voice because, again, you're the child. So you have to go through this life. And even though we say children are seen or not heard, but I feel like it's that same thing. Like you have to go through this with your parents until you're able to make decisions on your own. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Anything that your parents do involves you, but you can't really make that decision for you. So then as a parent, understanding when they get 17, between that 17 and 18, they are realizing all these things, right? You got to set the boundaries, right? You got to understand that that shift in your parenting is going to change, the role is going to change, because you do have to. Sakbase! Welcome to the Unfiltered Liming podcast. Join us as we reflect on our personal journeys and share our insights, experiences, and stories. From food to music, language to customs, we explore what it means to straddle two cultures and find a sense of belonging in both. Whether you're a first generation Caribbean American, a seasoned veteran, or simply curious about the rich tapestry of cultures that make up the Caribbean diaspora, this podcast is for you. We are your hosts, Bertide, the Haitian sensation.
Lisa, the Dominica diva.
No one's talking, so let's get unfiltered.
What up, B?
What up, L?
All right, let's go. All right, DLiminCrew, this week we have an interesting topic. We are talking about parenting and adulting. So, I'm gonna let...
Parenting adults.
What'd you say?
Other one too. Parenting and adulting plus parenting adults. So I think that's important. Girl.
You can't parent adults. You can't parent adults. That just...
Really?
No, you cannot parent an adult.
What do your parents do when you become an adult? They still your parents?
They still your parents, but they don't parent you.
You sure about that in the Caribbean islands?
I mean, well, they can try. But for real, the title should really be parenting preteens or parenting teenagers going into adulthood. Yes. That's what the real topic is. Parenting teenagers that are going into adulthood. Boom. Yes. DLiminCrew, let's get it. B, yes. I'll let you run this one.
So, DLiminCrew, we talk about our life experiences, right? And in life, there's always something that comes along because, again, this is what's next. This season, it's all about what's next. So, what's next in our lives, in my life right now, is that I have a child, as everyone knows, that is transitioning from being a young adult to a adult, from 17 to 18, right? That's that transitional age. And DLiminCrew, I have to be honest with you, it's been a mental transition to kind of go through, oh, the tone is different. The flexing is real. What else? The me not wanting to smack him until next week is real. Just being honest. Again, DLiminCrew, you're going to get the honesty disclaimer. This is my personal experience. This is what I'm going through. I am no expert. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a therapist. I'm not nothing.
Well, hold up. Right? You are an expert at being a parent because you have been a parent for what, 17 years?
Yes. Okay. But I'm not giving nobody no advice on how this is working. I'm just talking about my experiences. So please, anything that I say is based on what works for me and my situation right now, and I'm gonna give you the Caribbean versus American transition lifestyle parenting skills that I've had to deal with in this past. So conversation came about. I called Lisa and I was like, hey, this, and I won't give the details because at the end of the day, this is forever on the wave of radio. So, I got to protect my child in some way. But, incident happens. Your child is 17, about to transition and cross over into adulthood. So they start flexing a little bit, right? They start wanting to have a voice. Well, let me rephrase that. In my household, I've always given my child a voice because I've learned at a very younger age when I was young that in the Caribbean culture, you don't have a voice. So that was one of the things when I had kids. I was like, yo, I'm not going to do that to my kids. I do want them to express themselves. So that's always been there, expressed with respect. Respect
Mhm.
is the word. I want to make sure that. So when they
Mhm.
start transitioning, right? He's starting to transition between this young adult to adulthood. Conversation come about, and you start hearing a little bit of a tone, a bass. They call him a bass. They call him like their balls drop.
Oh.
I'm just being honest. That whatever it is for a girl, if you have a girl, it's the same thing. Whether you're a girl, boy, your balls. You think that you could flex on your parents, your ball drops. You trying to test the boundaries and all this other stuff. And I was like, wait a minute, wait a minute, because my Caribbean side, when this thing happened, the conversation happened, that I was like, oh, you crossing the line of disrespectful. And I told Lisa, I was like, my mind literally, and I don't know if it's because it's doing this podcast or I think it's doing this podcast because we talk about our American versus Caribbean perspective, right? And actually, in that moment when this incident happened with my child, when I was like, my two perspective came, my two antennas came, my American culture came, and my Caribbean culture came on how I was going to discipline this child. Only because my Caribbean side wanted to be like, oh, I'm going to smack you into tomorrow if you ever talk to me in a certain way and be disrespectful. And then my American side was like, well, it's a new age. We don't want to condone certain behaviors from our past. We don't want to, because I'm a strong believer. I don't want to condone, I don't want to say it's violence, but at the same time, I don't want to condone certain type of behaviors that I feel it's just me. I don't want to condone certain behaviors. So the smacking thing, especially again, because then my mind was like, well, wait a minute. He's about to be an adult. So felt just like probably he felt in that stage of transition, right? Like, this is about to be a full grown adult. And I know that they say 18 doesn't make you an adult, but at the end of the day, we have to respect the fact that we tell our kids, like, yo, when you're 18, you're an adult. And at the end of the day, I don't care who you are. When I was in my mom's household, I did it. I was like, oh, I'm 18. You're not going to be able to tell me what to do anyway. So I was in that flexing period, for a period of time. But yeah, so that experience had me all kind of that double agent, because at the end of the day, and I did say, get the F out of my house, because I do believe, like, you're not going to be disrespectful in my house. And then the comment that came, because again, the father and I are not together. And the comment was like, well, if you and my dad were together, would you still do that? The fuck, yes, I would. Read my lips. There's no way that if you think you're flexing, because you have every right to be who you want to be. Let me be very clear. But there's no way you doing that in my house. I don't care if me and your date are together for 50. I don't care where we are. You want to flex, you want to be an adult, respect that. There's a level of respect. But there's ever a time to disrespect your parents when you're going through this transition and think that your parents don't are not justified to say get the fuck out my house. Because again, you're an adult. You want to flex. I'm okay with you being out there in the world, because you're gonna come right back and understand that the disrespect is not gonna turn out real well. So again, from a parent, all this is going in my mind. So do you understand what I'm saying? Like, all of this Caribbean, American, all of this, people, is what the real topic of this conversation is gonna be about. Because I need help. I need y'all to help me. Give me some tips and tools, DLiminCrew, of, first of all, when you were in that transitioning stage, how did your parents handle it? Because I know we all flex on our parents. And mine was the same. I was told, well, you're old enough, and I moved out. I got into the real world. And guess what? I liked it. I'm not gonna lie. But it's one of those things, like, you don't realize a lot of times, some of the things your parents say and why they say it. But then you have a child of your own and you realize, oh fuck.
Whoo, child chicken. Let me tell you something. There is, I think back,
It's a
I
lot.
have,
It's a lot.
mm, I have not birthed any children of my own, but let me tell you something. He know what he was doing, because if he did, and there was another mini version of me, it'd be a problem. It'd be a straight problem because my
That
mouth was the
too.
problem.
Yes.
My mouth was the problem.
Yes. Because I
But
feel like you, that's why I think I kind of, going to your point, I think that's why in that moment, both of my antennas came up because my Caribbean side reminded me of how I was with my mother. And then my American side also reminded me. And then it was like trying to combine the two of the best practices
mhm.
of, okay, you've been there. Like literally. And I don't know if you ever had that moment because I think that's what makes us unique in our conversation in our podcast is being first generation is that we're able to pull, like we say, from all these perspectives. And if you have the tools, because we have conversations, right? And you have to be able to, even though and I would use myself as a parent, I have to sometimes stop and think, like, okay, my mom didn't do this part really well, right? In transitioning me. So for me, it was like quick instinct. That's like, oh, fuck, this is happening in real life. Right? This is happening, like out of body experience. And then you have to like process all the things that you could do right because you're never going to do everything perfect. But then you don't want to also add different things to make it where it could go. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Less because there's not a parenting book that tells you like this is right or wrong. But then also there's certain things that come from what you want to happen and the
Mhm.
expectation
Mhm.
and the shift that you realize like, oh, okay, let me sit back, let me analyze this so that that way the door of conversation is still open, right? The reality and the facts is don't ever, 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 because both my American and my Caribbean's gonna be like, the disrespect is not tolerated. And
Okay. I'm glad.
anything
That's the part I was waiting for because when
the
it comes to the crib,
flexing and any flexing. Let me tell y'all 17, if y'all listening to this, let me tell you, I don't care your parents, Caribbean, American, what they are. The disrespect is never going to be tolerated in any household. And if it is,
well,
I can't.
there's some
This is the one.
households that allow that from young, and that's
Yeah,
their own fault. So
yeah, yeah,
there's a lot of households that allow that are young, and 9 times out of 10 from the Caribbean culture or any foreign culture, they're not going to tolerate that. Number one, they're
yeah.
not going to tolerate it. Um, Now, when you mentioned about, because I know when we had this conversation yesterday, I was like, I'm gonna save my thoughts. Okay. And this is coming, I know we have to always balance between the Caribbean way, what the way that we were raised, because we're always basically duplicating how we were
Hmm.
raised. It's like a vicious
Right,
cycle, right?
right.
But however, yes, I think we have the great tools that we can pull from the American culture where now we can sit down, we can have a conversation. I can listen to your thoughts and how you
Hmm.
feel in your perspective. A lot
Hmm.
of times I feel like kids at that age, 17, really don't have a real perspective because they haven't experienced life, but I can still sit down and listen to where you're coming from and what you're feeling,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that in itself is respect. But once I ask you to do something once and I ask you to do something twice, and then I have to ask you a third time, we have a problem. Okay? Because at this point, I don't care what culture you come from,
Hmm.
I am your mother, therefore your provider. And if
Uh-huh.
I ask you to do something that directly affects me being that provider for you, it's a non-negotiable. I don't even know why we having this conversation. And
Hmm.
then for you to flex after I asked you something 3 times, and it was a reasonable request.
Yep.
Let's talk about that. It was a reasonable request.
Hmm.
Your tone wasn't raised. It was just regular, like, hey, by the way, do you mind doing X, Y, and Z?
But I have to say, by the third time, my tone is high
Well, of
because
course,
at this
rightfully
point,
so. No,
yeah,
and that's
yeah.
and that's the point that I'm getting to. If I got to ask you the third time and that
Mhm,
thing directly affects me being that provider for you, we
mhm,
got a problem.
mhm,
At that point, we can't sit down and have a conversation. At this point, I can't respect your thoughts and your
mhm,
perspective and how you feel. I can't do that because the fact that I got to the third time and I had to ask you, you no longer have
mhm.
any respect for what I asked you for. So
Right,
when you
right.
don't show me respect, I now in turn cannot show you respect. Okay? Because the reality is, even you're not 18, and even if you were 18, you're not in the financial number one position to be like, I'm gonna go out here, I'm gonna go to this apartment complex, I'm gonna fill out an application, I'm gonna go to this job, and I'm gonna be hired tomorrow, and I'm gonna just
Yeah.
go ahead and open this bank account, and I'm gonna go purchase a car so I can get back and forth to work. If you're not able to do all of that, if
Yeah.
I
Take
ask
several
you,
seats.
if
Take
I
several
ask
seats.
you to do something for me that directly affects me being a provider, listen, you ain't flexing on me. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the difference.
They're
Like,
gonna try, and I think to your point when we're having the conversation is the fact that, again, that's why we're having this conversation. The flexing, I guess, explain what the flexing is to people that don't know what the flexing is,
they
Lisa.
know what the flexing is. You putting some bass in your voice and you asserting
Think.
yourself, talk about what you ain't gonna do, or ignoring me.
Yes. Yes.
And if
So
they
the
don't know,
thing
they can
about
Google it.
that is, yes. So the thing about that is, again, for 17-year-old, it's everything Lisa said. Like, and I know, and that's why I said like my Caribbean and American side came because then, like she said, the disrespect is never going to be tolerated, right? For anyone, and you shouldn't even think. So, and maybe, because I'm gonna play the other side, maybe it's the fact that again, because you feel like you're going into adulthood, that you could express yourself in a way, but it's understanding and how you express yourself to your parents, the level of respect still needs to be there. You understand what I'm saying? So it doesn't mean that, oh, you're going from 17 to 18. I'm an adult and I could say how I want to say it. It's still, you could be 100 years old. And I think the level of respect giving to your parents, you still need to give that. Have I been in the past where I've been disrespectful and all that and didn't
Of
understand that lesson
course.
at
Of
17?
course.
Absolutely. I would put
Absolutely.
myself, and I think that's why I had to like give myself grace and him grace, because at the end of the day, as much as we could sit there and say, okay, disrespect, but I've done it. So I can't be hypocritical to say that I don't understand the flexing because I do. You understand what I'm saying? But it's also, I feel it's changing the way I react and I parent to it so that the child understands that's not tolerated. Because at
That's
the end of the
true, but I
day,
don't feel like you should use the word as being hypocritical because being hypocritical, you two have a relationship with an open communication and you promote
right.
independence where you can sit down and you can have dialogues and you can talk. You guys have
Mhm.
open communication. Okay. You and I, with our parents growing up, we did not have that at all.
Right.
So it is no way in so I don't feel like it's hypocritical because it's a totally different, you know what I'm saying? We weren't sitting down having dialogues with our parents. We weren't
Right.
sitting down having open communications and, oh, tell me how you feel today. And how are you? We ain't doing all of that. So you
You
cannot
know
even
the
say
part
it's
where I say
hypocritical.
hypocritical? You know why I say hypocritical? Because I did it. So that's what I
Yeah,
think.
we
I
did it.
can't, yeah, and it doesn't matter to what level. And I understand what you're saying, but to me, it's just like if somebody commits a crime and it's a crime, then it's like we're looking at the background, but it's still committing the same thing. So that's the way I look at it. I look at it like you're absolutely correct. We're not having the dialogue. And yes, I promote independence and I recognize the change in dynamics and I have the conversation. But at the same time, the way for me, why I say that is because I can't tell him, oh my gosh, all this other stuff. Like I can have the conversation of recognizing it and make him understand that that is not acceptable. But at the same time, I did it to my parent, regardless of whatever she was doing or not doing, because at the end of the day, we all knew that it was wrong, no matter what they were giving us. You understand what I'm saying? No matter
We
whether
knew
we were
it
sitting
was
down with
wrong, but
them.
I guess I'm thinking from a perspective that a lot of our frustration why we did it is because we didn't know why
Mhm.
they were doing and acting the way that they were acting. They
Right,
did not
right,
communicate with us. Kids were seen and not heard. So a
right,
lot of times we might have done these things and lashed out and flexed because it's really also to his attention, right?
right.
You know what I'm saying? But I just feel like when you have an open dialogue and you have a good communication and a good relationship, and you can come to me about anything, and you
Mhm.
already have, and we already established that years ago.
Mhm.
I think, no, I don't think you're being hypocritical. No, no.
Lisa doesn't think. Well, I appreciate it, but to me, I just feel like again because I did it. And again, it's understanding like, and it goes back to your point. They are also between when you're 17 and 18. To me, I feel like it's playing because I had somebody tell me that when I was 17. Like, hey, you're in that stage where you're still not a child, and but then you're trying to be an adult, right? Because you're understanding. So I think for me, when stuff like that, when it happened, I felt like that this is your child. This is your childlike behavior. You understand what I'm saying? You want to be an adult, but then you still have that childlike quality. You understand what I'm saying? To
Hmm.
be able to be like, okay, wait a minute, and that's why I got to handle you. So then that's what I'm saying. That's what we're having the conversation. That 17 and 18 is a weird space because at the same time, I feel like you're gonna have conversation, right? And the dynamic is changing. The roles are changing a little bit,
Yeah.
but they're
Hmm.
still behaving
Hmm.
like children,
Hmm.
right? It's
Yeah.
childlike behavior,
Hmm.
but at the same time, you're trying to flex to be like, well, I'm going into this adulthood. So they're transitioning and learning. And again, not condoning disrespect, but it's sometimes we have to go above and beyond what the underlining is. It's understanding like they might still have childlike behavior, but they're also trying to find their adult making decision because that
They're
role
trying to
is
find
shifting. Does that
themselves
make
too. They don't know
Yeah,
themselves.
you understand what I'm saying? And then to the other point is that you said where I have to disagree a little bit with you is even though our children may not understand and have certain things as adults as far as life, but I would say they experience life the same. They experience the things that we go through just in different eyes and perspective. So yeah, they might not know the hardship maybe that we know of life, but they know certain things because they've been in the household with us. And I think sometimes as Caribbean, that's where I feel like they didn't give us credit. It being seen and not heard is to say, well, you haven't experienced life because you haven't been out there. But at the same time, if they're in the household with you and let's say they hear about financial struggle like you're doing COVID, if parents had to struggle to make money, you know what I'm saying, had to do different things and had to overcome different things, your children are experiencing their emotion just like you are. They just may not be able to contribute to that, but they are experiencing life. So everything to say like that to me, I don't agree because there's a lot of things that happened before I got out of my mom's house, but it affected me because I saw my mom go through certain things. I experienced certain things with her. So it's still my life. Like it's still things in my life that made me who I am before I even got out of the house. You understand what I'm saying? Things like how she was with my dad, how she was with me and my sister. So it's just a different and then giving an example where if you have children, they lose a father. You understand what I'm saying? They are experiencing life in a different way with all the things that they have coming. So I just think they do experience life. They might not know certain struggles, but they know the struggle within seeing you and going through it through your eyes, through
Okay.
your does that make sense what
No,
I'm
it makes
saying? Like,
sense. Yeah, that makes
yeah,
sense. Yeah.
yeah,
That.
especially if you're having and I know for me, I know COVID probably also helped, you know, um, a lot of kids go through that because you think about suicidal rates in teenagers and all these other
Yeah.
things. It's
Mhm.
because life is so much pressured on them. You understand what I'm
Mhm.
saying? It's
Mhm.
because they're going through things and, you know, they don't feel like they have an outlet. So that perspective, that's why they do drugs. You know what I'm saying? There's
Mhm.
substance
Mhm.
abuse and all these things because no matter what they go through, because some children get abused. You know what I'm saying? Some
Mhm.
children go through so many things
Mhm.
at a young age
Yeah.
before they're even out there in the world. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So
Mhm.
they do have a life. It's just different. So I would that part on that one, to your point, I would say that they do experience life. They just don't experience it. Again, transitioning. What's next? They're not adulting yet, and I think that's also makes it difficult. Because
And
imagine
it's
you're going. you experiencing all this other stuff, but you have no, I don't want to say no. What's the word I want to say? You're not responsible for yourself yet
Mhm.
in those decisions that's
Mhm.
happening in life around you. So your parents get divorced, you have no decisions on that if you're young. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mhm. Mhm.
the things happening to your parents are happening to you, but you have no voice to say that this is what you want to do. You have no voice because again, you're the child. So you have to go through this life. And even though we say children are seen or not heard, but I feel like it's that same thing. Like you have to go through this with your parents until you're able to make decisions on your own. You understand what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Anything that your parents do involves you, but you can't really make that decision for you. So then as a parent, understanding when they get 17, between that 17 and 18, they are realizing all these things, right? You got to set the boundaries, right? You got to understand that that shift in your parenting is going to change, the role is going to change because you do have to start looking at your kids as adults. You
Yeah.
do have to start, like shifting how you communicate with them, shifting how you discipline them, shifting how you support them, because I can't support you the same way I was supporting you. You know what I'm saying? And the
Mhm.
guidance and the counsel I was giving you when you were a teenager or when you were going through this young adult, because at the end of the day, I'm not gonna be there when you go to
Mhm.
college. And you may call me, but I have to trust that you're gonna have to make decisions when I'm not around you. You
Mhm.
understand what I'm saying?
Mhm.
You're gonna have to trust yourself. You're gonna have to trust your decision. You're gonna have to trust these friends. You're gonna have to make friends and trust, are they the right ones
Yeah,
for
so
you or they're not
basically
for you?
encouraging responsibilities. You have to encourage
Yes.
responsibilities. And part of responsibilities is also too is respecting your home because once you learn
Yeah.
to respect those in home, then you'll be able to respect those out in the streets. Because another
Yep.
thing also too, they have their things that they go on in the house that they're experiencing growing up too. But I find also too with teenagers, there's a lot of things that they experience outside of the home that they don't even share with the parents.
Mhm.
You know what I
Yep.
mean? So that's a whole nother animal in
Mhm.
itself too. And I feel
Yeah.
like a lot of times teenagers are very impressionable and they're
Yeah.
very impressionable of what their friends tell
Yep.
them and everything. So
Mhm.
yeah,
What they see on
but
social media.
social media is another animal, but
Oh my
we have
god.
to, yeah, that's a whole nother animal we're not even going to get into because that's
Talk
a
about the
third person.
Caribbean.
Huh?
They talk about the Caribbean because I feel like everything we're talking to, I would have to say this is where the American culture has taught me in a way about what we're discussing, like everything about setting the boundaries, understanding shift in roles, understanding, like you're saying, responsibility,
Mhm.
understanding that they need to have a voice and how you communicate. That's all the American. The
Yeah.
Caribbean, yo, I don't know what to tell you in the
No,
Caribbean.
there's none of that. There's none of that in the Caribbean. But however, I do think that it's changing in the Caribbean because now
Yeah.
teenagers growing up and kids growing up in the Caribbean have access to social media, which is all around the world. So
Mhm.
they have it at their
Yeah.
fingertips now. So I would not be surprised if now there are more children in the Caribbean now expressing themselves, voicing their opinions and stuff. It's not to say there's consequences for that. And what I'm saying? Not only the Caribbean, but foreign cultures. Yeah.
But I also think like the Caribbean parents that have been here, so not again, this is not a diss people, but the ones fresh off the boats compared to the ones that have been here for a while. I think, and I'm not trying to be, but that, I'm just putting in. And if you're Caribbean, y'all know what it is. The ones
Yeah.
they say fresh off the plane or whatever. But
Yeah.
I feel like there's a big difference in the ones like we said that have been acclimated, like our parents that have been acclimated to this country for a while in comparison to ones that are brand new that are still carrying that Caribbean.
Mhm.
They're coming here and they haven't been really assimilated or acclimated to what the culture is and all these other stuff, and they bring this. So
Mhm.
I think there's also a big difference, like you're saying. Like I feel like maybe if I was in my mom's household being a teenager now, I think things would have been different because she would
Oh
have been a
yeah.
little bit
It
more.
would have been. I think. Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you know what I
Because
mean? Like it's changing in their parenting style, changing in certain things that maybe, you know what I mean, that their mind would have been a little different. So I do agree. There's a little bit of shift in how parents parent their their children in the Caribbean household,
Yeah, but
and
that's not the thing
communication.
is like by the time they shift, we're already adults and out of the house and on their own.
Mhm.
Because I could see that with my own parents. They shifted years after I had already been out
Mhm.
of the house for 10 years. Now I'm like,
Mhm.
well, who are you? I don't know even know who you are.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
even though it's still too late at that
Yeah.
point, but I don't know. I feel like also I don't know if how we're gonna even adjusting our expectations. I don't even know about that because that gets tied into that
Mhm.
too. But
Yeah.
maybe I feel like they need to adjust. Well, no, you know what? Let me say this. I feel like parents that come from the Caribbean and come up to you're coming to a new culture here and
Mhm.
you need to adjust your expectations, right? And I'm going to tell you
Yes.
why. Because you're raising American children. You're raising
Mhm.
children that have
Mhm.
to go out there and deal in the world. Granted, at home, I think a lot of times they feel like whatever we say is my word is bond. That's it. I can teach you all the tools that you need.
Yeah.
You actually can't because now you now dumped us in this new culture that you
Mhm.
yourself have no idea about. Let's
Right.
keep that real.
Right.
You have no
Yeah,
idea
because they're
about
trying
it.
to teach it to you from they're trying to teach it to you from their Caribbean point of
Hmm.
view, and thinking that's and some of it, not to say again, not to say that some of the foundations are not good, but then like you said, you have to adjust it to also take what works and what you need to incorporate into the new culture with what, like you said,
Hmm.
everything that you got going on in this new culture, because again, your kids are going to go to school with kids that are, you know what I mean, that their social media nowadays, there's so many things that are coming from, like when your household, your responsibility was different, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, the expectation was different. So I think you're right, you have to um adjust that expectation so that it makes sense for your household. And the other thing too is, again, speaking to my experience and adjusting the expectation, is also if you are dealing, and I'm only speaking for myself, disclaimer, this is myself, a divorced household, a one parent household, and then a united front household, these are all different also expectation and adjustments, right? You
Hmm.
got to make it, like for me, we're divorced, so the expectation of when this happens with your kids transitioning, you, and it's always hasn't been easy, let me tell y'all, but you have to have the conversation. So one of the things that I would say, and again, it's not been perfect with my child's father or not. Every time we've gone through like a transitioning, because your kids transition, right? They go from 10, then 16, 13, or whatever. There's always been a transitioning point. They're good for a little bit, but then they grow. We all go through that in life, and you got to be able to have the conversation and come together, right? Because I think that's very important, and I think that's one of the things sometimes we've we've gotten it right, and sometimes we have not gotten right because of our
Hmm.
own whatever sitting in
Hmm.
the way, whatever, and kids, they will use that, right? So the
Oh,
thing
they're
about it is,
manipulating. Let's just keep it real.
yes, yeah, so if you are like a household where you're not together and your kids are going through that 17, 18-year-old transition, whatever transition it is, and even if you are in a household together, have the conversation. Like I'm adamant about, he's 10, what does he need at 10? He's 13, what does he need at 13? Now he's at 17, what does he need right now? So your message is the same.
Hmm.
And, and sometimes you need help, like, you need supportive cast member to say, okay, this is what we're gonna say. Because sometimes people be getting on your nerve.
Yeah.
Sometimes if you have another third person in the mix of your parenting that don't look at here, I'm gonna say disclaimer, but I don't really give a fuck. If parents are divorced or you're not together and you got significant others that's not the child's parent, please be very careful on how you allow the parents to come together. I'm not saying don't give your opinion, because I do believe if you're one of the good role models in the child's life, you see them differently and you can influence, but you handle that with that parent and let that parent handle it with the parents themselves. Don't try to
Facts.
be in the middle and thinking you got, yo, yo, that's another episode. We're going to do another episode all about how to deal, because guess what? My Caribbean and my American side are two different sides on how you handle these type of people. I'm just saying, like, just allow the
Yeah,
parents,
that's
because
a
this is their
whole nother
children.
conversation. That's a whole nother
Right, but these are
conversation.
their children. You understand what I'm saying? Just like your parents, your mom and your dad, right? They were in the same household, but they view you and your siblings differently. And they have to have the conversation because they are your parents, right? And I'm not saying if you haven't birthed a child and you've been around somebody else's child that you can't input, but just be very respectful of what that parent contribute, because you could still help, right? You could play, you could be one of the supportive group of that tribe, as they say, right?
That's all
But
you
just,
are. When you
yeah,
are the significant other and that's not your child, all you are is support.
yeah.
So when somebody
But
needs to
just be
phone a friend or phone,
yeah,
so that's where you come in. Till then,
yeah.
sit your ass down. Mind your business.
And it's called we learned that it's called self-care for parents, right? Because you're gonna need to discuss with, your significant other, if or whatever. Even if you are the child parents, you guys need to have some type of communication to discuss how you're going to maneuver through your kids different stages in life and development, right?
Hmm.
You're going to need to have the same message, you're going to need to communicate. And I
United
think,
front. You need to have a united front.
yeah, and I
Hmm.
think sometimes, well, I don't know if Caribbean do it better than an American. Personally, I don't really know on that one, to tell
I
you
don't
the
know
truth.
either. I know it's usually a village. People are gonna
Yeah.
have to say what they have to say, but I don't think, and again, I could be wrong, but from what I have witnessed and grown up in my years on this planet, I have not seen Caribbean adult interfering as much as American significant others interfere with.
Say that one more time.
Okay. I feel like when you have
Mhm.
a couple that's together, for example,
Mhm.
you're divorced. You and the father are no
Mhm.
longer together, and they have a
Mhm.
significant other. I feel
Mhm.
like I do not see as many Caribbean folks interjecting and taking over as if they're the parents and they have a
Uh,
say, opposed to Americans that be jumping in people's business and have something to say about somebody else's child. Again, I could be wrong, but I'm just saying from what I have seen, I feel like that's more of American thing. Like, I'm not the mother, but I'm gonna jump in, put my 2 cents, and you need to do this and you need to do that. And uh, yeah, I don't feel like
there's a
I've
I
seen
feel like,
Caribbean
right, because
folks doing that.
yeah, I agree with you, because at the end of the day, I know, like, when first of all, when I did get divorced, like, my Caribbean family was like, "Oh my," because now I believe that they do, but I would
Maybe
say that's
not.
the American.
Maybe
They're
they've been
more prone
influenced by
to,
the American culture. They've been
no, I
influenced
was
by
saying,
it.
like being divorced in the Caribbean is like, at the time that I was divorced, it was very like, "Oh my gosh, you're divorced." Where in the American, you get divorced, it's like, "Okay, what we doing?" You understand what I'm saying?
We're
Like
having a
the
divorce party. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, exactly, right? It is true, and they do
Yeah.
that, but the in American, they're like, "Oh, this is so," like, I was told, "Oh my gosh, this rarely happens in our community. Like, this rarely happens to our family. Like, what are you gonna," like, they were really like, it was like a shock in the Caribbean, and like my
Yeah.
family
Your
used to
life
come
is
to me.
over. Your life is over.
Yes.
Yeah, your
Yeah,
life is over.
exactly. So they were just like, "Oh," and especially when the person is able to move on, then they're like, "Oh my gosh." And then they don't understand, certain dynamics. But as a parent, right, you have to manage your stress, right? You have to manage, like, you're learning your kids, you're learning how to parent, you're learning what style works and what doesn't work. So I think you're right. When you do have a third party or fourth party influence, again, there has to be a rightful way to do it, and there's a wrongful way to do it. You can't control and manipulate. You can't, and I'm not saying that if that person has been in your child's life and they're a positive influence in your child's life because they want the best for them, yes, all hunky dory, they should be allowed to provide you with, if I have a significant other and they've been around my child, because that I've had that happen and they've observed my child. They come to me with their
Yep.
observation,
Yes, that's the
right?
way it's supposed
They
to be.
don't try to be, they're like, yo, I just noticed this, just want to let
Yeah.
you know. And they let me decide how to parent or discipline my child or how I should address it with their father or whatever. Does that make
Mhm.
sense? But
Mhm.
they don't try to come in and call the father or trying to make decision and be in control and be in the mix.
Mhm.
That to me sometimes could be
Problematic.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? So
Mhm.
in conclusion, parenting transitioning kids that are going from 17 to 18, what tips and tools do I have? Find yourself a village, a support system to manage your parenting stress, to manage the transition, to manage like how you're going to support yourself and support the child coming together. If you are together, having the same message with the parent of how you're going to handle this process, because your children also need to feel like that you support them, right?
Mhm.
But at
Mhm.
the same time, you don't support foolishly.
Mhm.
Let's be very clear.
Yeah.
You don't support. There's just certain things we don't support and we don't tolerate because it doesn't change us because you're 18, right? So it's still the same, even though, like, yeah, we're gonna change our expectation because we understand that you're an adult now. But with that, understand. So for me, if my expectation changed, then you need to feel the full pressure of what that is. So you can't behave as a child like when that expectation changed, right? That's the other thing too. Children don't realize once your parents adjust that expectation, guess what? Don't be coming back and saying, "Oh, then you want to be like, oh, well, you want to be treated like a child." No,
Mhm.
no. Once you flexing, once you've done like, "Oh, I'm an adult," guess what?
You're
My
gonna get
parents,
treated like
I'm
an
just,
adult. You're gonna get treated like an adult. And as far as my tip is concerned, that is part of my tip. If you feel like you want to act like an adult and you want to flex, you're gonna get treated like an adult. Okay. Number two, the other tip that I have also too that we touched on is that I myself have a stepdaughter. If you're part of the village and that's not your child, birth child, stay in your lane
mhm,
and until you're asked for your opinion or whatever, stay in your lane. If you feel some way about that child has done something, you go to the child's parent and you have a conversation with that child's parent, your significant other. You know,
mhm,
you got to
yeah,
respect the parents. They're the
yep,
ones. You got to respect it. Now, if there's a situation, a parent has passed and you've adopted, then that's a whole nother
mhm,
animal. But that's my tip. Number one, you act like an adult, you're going to get treated like an adult if you're going to start moving that way. Number two, if you're on the outside a significant a partner and that's not your child, you need to respect the boundaries. You
mhm,
have to stay in your lane, drink your water, and mind your business. Okay.
yeah. And read books. There's a book I have to finish reading it, but it's called Two Homes, One Child. If you're divorced,
Yeah.
two homes, one child. This book is written by Robert Emery is the last name. He's a PhD. He's a doctor. Again, find resources to help you parent, to help you navigate because we don't have the answers. So
No.
that's another thing too. Research the development of your child's different age stage development stages in life. They're out there, right? Understanding like, yeah, they might be flexing. And again, it's not a bad thing that they're doing that, but know how you're gonna overcome it, I guess,
Yep.
or how you're gonna address it.
Hmm.
Address it so that way it's not catching you off guard. Like, oh,
Yeah.
he flexing. Why he flexing?
Okay.
Oh, because he going through that stage. All right, bet. Now your parenting style is shifting because now you got to shift with where your child is developing. So all these
Exactly.
things are, being open. But thank you. I mean crew. Thank you. We're gonna put some other video that we think you might like. And
Yes.
then we might, I might put this book in the resourcing and tips and tools. But let us
Yeah.
know, DLiminCrew.
All right.
What other things, Caribbean versus American things that if your child is flexing at 17 going on 18 that you do, we do not condone violence.
All right, DLiminCrew, we out.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Unfiltered Liming podcast. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and gained some valuable insight. Don't forget to subscribe to the show so you can catch every new episode and leave us a review so we can continue to bring you fresh, exciting content. And if you have a topic you'd like us to discuss or a story you'd like us to share, please reach out to us. Join us again next Thursday for another unfiltered conversation about the rich diversity and complexity of the Caribbean American experience. Until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep celebrating the unique cultural heritage that make us who we are. Unfiltered Liming is edited and produced by Unfiltered Liming.